Well, there was a Michael Edelstein, who was the non-writing producer on it, the executive producer, and I had offices that were close to each other in the Disney Animation Building, and we had developed a show before, so we knew each other pretty well and had worked on a series before. And he came in one day and he said, "What do you think about this for series?" And it was the British. There was a thing called Voyage to the Planets that was a BBC. It wasn't really, sort of like it wasn't really a drama so much as sort of a docu, what if you went around to the planets and what would you see kind of thing, and it had a little bit of drama in it. But I watched it and I said, yeah, absolutely, there's a series here. We could do a dramatic sort of work in a soap opera storylines and take this basic premise of a voyage through the planets and make a show out of it. So we contacted the producer, I can't remember his name now, of the BBC show, and brought him aboard and said, we're gonna use your show as sort of a we're going to cut it up and make a trailer out of it as sort of a sales piece, and do a show around it, and make him an executive. He was an executive producer on the show, though we didn't do anything. And then I went off and came up with what became Defying Gravity, and we took it to FTVS, which Fox Television Studios, and they loved it, and we took it from there. We took it out to the world at that point. We sold ProSieben and BBC. When ProSieben came in, they came in with a substantial amount of money, and we knew we were going to make the show at that point. And then we went up to Canada and made a deal there, and then went ahead with the show. So that's what happened. No, it's a drama. It's a drama set in space, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, the show was bought by ABC about 3 weeks before the show was broadcast, yeah. We'd already made the show, but actually we're still finishing the show at that point. But yes, ABC bought it, and it was a strategic late buy. They knew they didn't want to put any promo money into it. ABC was actually trying to just kill the show, really. To be perfectly honest with you, that's what they were doing. And so they bought it late. I don't think FTVS should have sold it to them, but they did. And so we debuted without any promotion at all, basically. And it really screwed our Canadian partners badly because CBC was planning to air it as a fall show, and they sort of have to air it when it airs in the United States because in Canada they can pick up the show across the border in a lot of the major cities. So they're obligated to air it at the same time, and it really screwed them. It made them have to air it in, I think it was August. It was in right at the end of summer when nobody's watching television, and it died. That was what ABC intended to do, just to kill it. Well, they had to debut their fall season. They knew that we were. I mean, if you pick it up and start airing it in August, 8 shows takes you through the end of September, and then October is your fall season starts, your big shows. So they knew that they were only going to go that far. I knew they were only going to go that far. It was we all sort of knew it wasn't going to air the whole thing. It was pretty miserable. I was pretty angry at the time, very disheartened. And ABC, by the way, had a chance to buy it much earlier, and they elected not to do it. And they saw the show and expressed interest, but they wouldn't even deal with the studio in terms of buying it until it was too late. And it was just all planned. We took it to a bunch of other places. I actually think Sci-Fi might have been interested in it. But they move very slowly. So with Sci-Fi, if Sci-Fi had bought it, they would have probably waited almost another 6 months before airing it, maybe even more. And FTVS didn't want to hold on to the deficit. They deficit financed it. And so were paying off this debt, and they didn't want to hold their debt that long. What I was hoping that they would do is that they would hold off until late October or November, when that's usually when shows that clearly aren't going to make it on all the networks start, you start going, okay, that show's dead, that show's dead, that show's dead, and they're looking for other shows to plug in. And I was sort of hoping they would wait for that moment, sort of toward October, November, and sell it to somebody who needed a show immediately to go on the air. And I think we would have done better than we did with ABC, certainly. Well, I knew the ending of the show. I knew that season 2 was going to be about Mercury and then Mars, and getting to Mars, and our whole drama was going to be that Raleigh and Eve were going to go to Mars. But Raleigh was going to go to jail, and they were going to pull him out of jail to, in fact, fly the supply mission that was going to be unmanned, but fly Eve in the supply mission to Mars for the resupply. And so he and Eve were going to be on Mars when the crew got there. That was going to be the 3rd season. We might have done the entire 3rd season on Mars. And beyond that, I didn't have the seasons mapped out per se, because you never know how long you have to go. If you're a big hit, they may say, no, we're going to, we'll run 7 or 8 seasons with you. And so you have to then stretch it out at that point. But I knew that that's where I wanted to go there. And I knew the ending of the show, where we were going. The success of the show would have also allowed us to open up Earth more. And we were planning on doing that with AJ's character and with the whole conspiracy, what was going on Earth. And in fact, Goss was going to turn out to actually be a good guy in the end. He was going to be bad up to a point, and then realize that how screwed up it was, and that his team was really just being set up, and was going to become one of the good guys. But yeah, there was going to be a whole drama thing going on Earth as well. Yeah, I think somebody was going to die on Mars. Well, I just say I think that, God, I did have it sort of worked out a little bit. I think I was actually probably good. I think Ted was going to die on Mars. No, Ted was in the end. Ted isn't going to die on Mars. Raleigh was going to die on Mars, I think, was going to happen. Yes, Eve would have been on Antares for the remainder of the show. They were going to discover all kinds of things. I was playing all kinds of things with Mars, like, for instance, I can't remember the characters' names, but the Donner's previous girlfriend, what was her name? That she was actually pregnant. They were going to find her remains and a baby's remains, and that she had lived long enough to actually have the baby in one of the habitats there. There was going to be weird stuff happening. There was going to be all kinds of shit. Anyway. Yeah, they'd been shorted to a point where all they could do is just couldn't get back. They would drift out and out and out and out, further and further. Correct. Yep. Well, then what would happen is they would realize that they are going out, and that the once they have all the objects, they'd realize that they don't have the fuel to get back, and so they park themselves in that orb and decide the only thing they can do then is reassemble the objects and see what when Wassenfelder makes the discovery that it really is in fact a puzzle, they decide they have to do that. So yeah. No, I haven't talked about that at all. I would have dug back into my fractal world and made them. But, they could have all suddenly turned into shapes, or they could have turned into, there could have been, those things were malleable. Well, it sort of is immaculate conception. Yes, it's Donner's baby. They were going to get together again, but Donner was definitely going to be clipped this time. I mean, there was going to be no chance, and she still would have been pregnant. And then I was going to have her kind of get weird, which is why they sort of had her in lockup with the child, because they didn't know what the fuck was going on. And, yeah, there was going to be something like that. I hadn't worked that out, but I knew that was kind of where it was going to go. Yes, that's true. Yeah, that's it. It's sort of the mankind's weaknesses. Mankind, they all have to overcome something. And by overcoming them, it's sort of like we were earning our place in the universe. is kind of what it is. You know, man overcoming things to earn their place in the universe, and then being given the puzzle to ultimately save themselves, which was sort of the idea. And by the way, in mentioning the Zoe pregnancy again, don't forget, okay, the first pregnancy was in season 1. That other pregnancy would have been in season 6. You know, it would have been way down. And so it wouldn't have felt like pregnancy. It would have felt very different. Yeah. Oh, I can't remember all of them. I mean, Paula was clearly had to get over her religious hiding of her abuse. You know, that was going to be the next season. We were going to get into that more. And what was I going to do with Wassenfelder? I can't remember what I was going to do with him. But Was. And Jen is the acute, you know, part of her whole sexuality is the need to be with someone and not feel alone. And hers was all about her loneliness and abandonment. And feeling, and that's why she can't see the fractals. She is the only one, and she can't figure out, and she needs to overcome. Her problem was going to deal with that. So, but yeah, I can't remember all of them. I had them, but I don't have the scratch sheet in front of me. What I was doing. Yeah, I mean, the Donner Zoe romance is going to. What was interesting about that romance and what was going on in Donner's life is that. What was I going to do exactly with Donner? I mean, I know what was going to happen in the second season is that she left. Obviously, she got canned, and she was going to go back to her hometown, and there was going to be a romance there and a life there, and then. I can't think of the character's name. The character who limps down in Mission Control was going to get screwed up in a training exercise, and she was going to be called back. But Donner was going to be visiting her and tormented by that. That was going to be a love triangle in the second season that was going to play out, and then finally Zoe was going to come back. Their romance then would have played out more in the past than in the present. The second season would not have been so much about Donner and Zoe on the ship itself, but it would have played out more in the past. And we were going to deal with the whole hermaphrodite thing with what's her name? With Nadia, yeah. She was going to be the person who goes down onto the surface of Mercury, which is survivable if you're right where it turns from daylight to night. Right in that area, there's a it's actually quite temperate right there, but it either gets really cold or really hot very quickly. But there's this temperate zone. But we were going to deal. That was going to be the big metaphor for her existence, and she was going to work through that. Goss? No, I don't know. I didn't have a lot planned. I think I would have gotten into Goss more when in later seasons, as he starts to realize what's going on. Then I would have probably done more flashback with him, but I wasn't going to do it up in the next season or two. Yeah, when we got to Mars, we would have definitely, because that's what they were going to get. That's what Donner didn't know. That's what Cheryl and Walker were going out to get. They were going out to get the damn thing, and it wasn't letting them. But that's absolutely, we would have definitely gone back to that mission. Yeah. Nope, I hadn't planned them out yet. That was too far ahead for me. I would have, if the series had gone on, I would have done more thinking of the subsequent years and how we were going to do it and what we were going to do. But you can only go so far. Yeah, that's going to come out that it was fake. That the fake landing was going to be, I was going to use that. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. Probably that. Yeah, but that was certainly part of the thing. And Trevor was going to become actually a good guy. Asshole Trevor was going to become a good guy, and I mean, he's going as he starts to unearth it, he's actually unearthing the truth. And so you may hate him at first, but he's going to eventually hook up, and he and AJ and Maxime Roy's character, Claire. Yeah, they were all going to become the Earth people who drive the story forward. Yeah, the state of the world is going to be pretty fucked up. I mean, it would have been global warming in the extreme. Although we would have discovered that there was a launch site down in Florida that they were still using, even though Florida was largely swamp, and that was going to be. I mean, don't forget, one of the things that we saw in the second to last episode, is always walking across Venus, as we saw all these other probes that were there that she was walking through, and the simple fact is they had tried to get these things before. And had no luck. So, yeah, well, where were those being launched from, and what was going on? But yeah, the world was going to be in a pretty fucked up place. That's why we were launching from the very, very illogical place of up in a temperate area. I mean, like Pacific Northwest. You don't launch from Pacific Northwest unless that's a crazy place to launch from. You can't get launch velocity, because the Earth's not spinning fast enough. Yeah, okay. There is stuff. What we discovered, the original pilot, the first couple of acts, when we went to test it originally, they did not test well. And the reason why they didn't, we began with the Mars launch, with the Mars sequence. It started the whole show and was larger. And one of my earlier drafts had that whole father relationship in it, which is really crucial. But we decided that we couldn't afford, time-wise, the father relationship and the Mars things. We had to eliminate one, and so we eliminated, in the original pilot, that whole father thing. When we tested it, we realized that the father thing really made you latch onto Donner as a character. And we also wanted to meet, we didn't have the bar sort of party champagne fun scene, was not in the original pilot. So we added those in Act 1 to, help introduce the characters in a better way than we had them introduced, and to clearly show the audience that Donner was the character to watch, that Donner and Zoe were the two characters to watch, which they were having problem when we first test screened it. They really didn't know who to watch. And it was really interesting. Dave Madden, who runs Fox Television Studios now, then he was second in command, but Dave was one of the producers of Officer and a Gentleman, the movie. He was a movie producer for many, many years. And Dave, when we got the bad test, he said, this is what happened on Officer and a Gentleman. He said, that movie tested horribly when we first screened it. And we realized it was because they didn't know who to root for. They didn't know to root for Richard Gere. And so we put the father story into that movie up front, and suddenly it tested through the roof. And so we put the father story back in, and recut Acts 1 and 2 substantially. Now, we cut a bunch. We cut a bunch of scenes out, tightened a bunch of things, and reorganized the first couple of acts for the final pilot. That, by the way, happens often. It's not. That's kind of why you test a show. They pay like almost $30,000, between $25,000 and $30,000 for these one night tests, but you can learn quite a bit from them. No. Honestly, no. I would, on a lot of shows I go yes. On this show I would go no. I think what we cut out deserved to be cut out. I really don't think we eliminated anything that really killed me to eliminate. I was generally very happy with these shows, as they progressed. I mean, there were some things that I cringed at, but I think that by and large, I thought I was very happy with the result on these shows. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Don't forget, we're still writing them while they're shooting. You know, I mean, we're shooting episode 2 and we're writing episode 6, you know, or 5. You know, we're staying just ahead of camera. So the answer to that question is yeah. They were great. They were great. You would have been very impressed. I wish all of you guys, the fans, had been able to go up and walk those sets. They were magnificent. Steve Gagan and his crew did an amazing job on them. That was, I have to tell you, the most heartbreaking thing for a creator, and I've been in the business long enough that I've done this a bunch of times, is to have a show get canceled or go down, and to take that sad last walk through the sets. You know, it is, believe me, it is heartbreaking, and these sets were terrific. Quite involved. Yeah, we get, you know, you're involved in everything. Steve, who is our designer, was showing us stuff. The actual shape of the Antares is similar to the shape of the ship that was in the BBC. When you do research on it, you kind of learn that that's what the ship would look like. You know, that's the general design of what a ship for that mission would look like. So we knew, although Steve Gagan, I think, still has a napkin. I have a collage somewhere. I don't know where that is. I think, I have to find my collage. He made a big collage, but there was a napkin that I drew the ship on our first meeting. Edelstein and Gagan and I had dinner down here in Los Angeles. I said, here's what we're looking at, and I drew this thing, and he kept it. He said, sign it. Sign the napkin. So I signed the napkin, and I think he has the original. I have a facsimile copy somewhere. But yeah, we were all involved in it. But Steve Gagan is the true hero. He was the designer for the show and did a magnificent job. And we got lucky on the mission control set. The mission control set was, I don't know if you guys, maybe it's, anyway, it was a set for, I think it was called Blade 2, a Wesley Snipes movie. They had this big set that was built, and what was the show that was in there before we were in there? They weren't using it at all. They were kind of building stuff around it, but it was this huge steel, 3-story structure that we inherited, that we just walked in. I went, oh my God, this is mission control. And then Gagan had to replace all the glass because it wasn't tempered and we had to do a lot of restoration on it. But that set was basically standing for us, which we never could have afforded to build had we not walked into it. It was an amazing piece of luck. Those we built from scratch, but all the mission control stuff was kind of already there. We added to it, but it was already there. We got very lucky. Well, I don't know. I loved all those characters, really. Donna and Zoe were my primary characters. I loved AJ. Wassenfelder was great. To write for him was fun. Jen, I liked. Raleigh was going to be great. Raleigh, he's a really good actor, Ty, and we're going to do really good things with him. And Claire and what was his name? Evan was the character's name. That I.L. Podell played we were going to develop those guys. Yeah, they were all good. I mean, I liked, they were all, it was a really good cast, and they were a lot of fun to work with, and they were all great people. We had an awfully good time. That's one of the sad things is that, when you come together as a cast and you're together for 6 months and then you're gone, it's just like, oh man. But it was going to be a lot of fun for all of them. We had a lot of good things planned. Yeah, it's a good question. I sort of look, this is, by the way, something that I brought to Grey's Anatomy, which is what we did in Grey's Anatomy. And I did it in many shows before. It's sort of a trademark of mine, actually. I have to stop doing it. But I always look for a theme in a show. I always say, what is my lead character going through? What is the core, whether if you're going to hang the show on a Donner dilemma, or a Zoe dilemma or whatever, but what is my core character going through, and thematically, and then try to work it through other stories. And I find it's very helpful. It gives episodes a framework, and an underlying connection. The stories then, of course, connect together and amplify and reverberate off each other. And I find it a very effective way of telling stories in 42 minutes, which is what you have in television. Writing hour television is like haiku, because you don't have a lot of minutes but yet you have a lot of information and a lot of story to tell. So you have to. I find it's always best, and you can always get that good emotional ending if your stories in some way relate to each other. But yeah, yes, I am definitely a thematic writer. Yes. No, I think they all pretty much went as planned. I think we knew. I mean, the pilot is the one that probably changed the most from beginning to end. And you're still feeling your way through. I don't think the pilot is our best episode. We had a lot to set up and a lot to get going, and I think the pilot worked out well, but I think that we really started to hit our stride, unfortunately, toward the end, toward 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, in that run is where we really started to be the show that we could be. And I felt very happy with those episodes and how it all came together. I mean, I think it came together very well. Because I don't believe in teasing an audience forever. Part of it is a frustration from watching Lost in some of those seasons where you just went, come on, will you give us a fucking answer? And it's like, and I didn't want that. I said, no, we can give this answer here. Let's give it, and let's then spin off that. And so I just didn't want to keep, I was a little tired of people looking at those orange clouds blowing up in my mind going, whoa, whoa. It's like, what are they seeing? Who cares? Let's move on. Let's find out what it's about, and get on with it. So that's what I wanted to do. And it was important. It was important to launching Jen's story. I don't see it. It was important for Wasserfelder's storyline. It was important. So yeah, no, that was the plan all along, was to get it going and to not frustrate the audience. I do not want to frustrate an audience. Yeah, you can. Oh yeah, sure. I mean, if I have a really good idea from the past, that I can say, oh, I can work that in here because it never went on that project. I've certainly done that. I think most writers do. I still think my best writing is sitting on a shelf, didn't get made, didn't get picked up. It's very frustrating when you have projects that don't go. And in a way, if you do take anything out of them, the frustrating thing is, and the reason why you kind of don't want to, is because then you've polluted that project. Because that project, who knows? Somebody may want to make it 3 or 4 years down the line, and you don't want to say, oh yeah, well I took that. I mean, I on Grey's, the sort of thematic voiceover. Shonda had a voiceover in there, but it wasn't the thematic voiceover that it wound up being. We did that on the pilot. I sort of brought that into it, and I did a show called American Embassy. It was originally called Emma Brody 4 years earlier for Fox, and I did it with John Landgraf, who's now running FX. He was running Danny DeVito's company at that time, Jersey, and we did this show. And he was furious at me. He said, you gave Shonda Rhimes your show. And I said, no, I didn't. I said, we just are doing the thematic thing. But yes. I said, John, our show is dead. Our show is never coming back. It aired. It's gone. You know, this is like, it's like, why not? You know, let's get this thing, you know, take what's good about what you've done and roll it in. And, you know, Shonda liked it and we incorporated it. But but yeah, I've been doing that thematic thing for years, since the mid-'90s. I discovered that and went, wait a minute. This is a good way to write television. Even if you don't have a voiceover, it's still, the thematic thing is really good. You can really make it work. Well, they're not really different at all. In that, as I said, I already had that father story. I mean, that father story, I mean, you know, he was still called Maddox Donner, and he still had the baseball, and he still had the, you know, the whole story behind the baseball is what we added back into the pilot. But that was always part of it. And, yeah, so they're really not different. We just rolled the story out a little differently. Oh, totally. Defying Gravity, here's where Defying Gravity got screwed. We were sort of one of the learning. There were a couple of shows that were put together the same way we were, at roughly the same time. And the lesson that the business learned from us is that you can't make a show outside of the U.S. networks and plan to sell them to the U.S. networks without that U.S. network having some involvement in the development. Why? Because their executives want to feel that they have a hand in it. You know, they want to take partial credit for it. If they buy a show that they didn't have anything to do with creatively, and it's a success on their network, well, then their bosses look down and say, hey, why go through all this development money and pilot making, which is just throwing money down the drain? Why not buy series that are already made? You know, and it takes power away from them. So and by the way, that's kind of one of the reasons why I think we were killed. I mean, why it was a tough sell. Now, what everybody learned is, okay, so you go to what we should have done when they started doing it the following season, is you go to ABC and you go, hey, we've got this thing, and we've put together the, you know, ProSieben and BBC and CBC, and we'd like to you know, pre-sell it to you guys. We'll pitch it to you guys and have you guys get involved and give us script notes and be part of the development process. And then they go, yeah, great. And then they, you know, if they like it, they buy it, you know, and that's a better way to go. Yeah, they learned that. If we'd made Defying Gravity 2 years later, I think we'd be on the air. Even 1 year later. It would have been developed differently and we would have been on the air. Which is too bad, but that's the way it goes. I'm working on a show for TNT. They're sort of getting darker. It's not what I would have called a TNT show. It's more like an FX show. That's called Six, and it's about a tornado that wipes out a town in Kansas, and it's about what the tornado uncovers, what it unearths in terms of, you know, crime and the dark side of a town. So it's a dark cataclysm show. Not entirely dark, but I mean it has a very dark underpinnings and dark stories underneath it. And yeah, it's cool. I hope it goes forward. Who knows? You never know. I wrote a draft of it, and TNT loved it, but they said, "Can you make it lighter?" So now I'm doing a draft that's making it lighter. You know, it's just trying to make it a little not quite so dark. So we'll see. I don't know. Yeah, we don't know, and it's so expensive that I don't know if they're gonna. TNT has not yet picked up. Oh, I think maybe the Darabont mini they picked up as a series, but they generally make pilots, and this pilot is too expensive to shoot as a pilot. it needs to be like, for instance, Defying Gravity was too expensive to shoot as a pilot. We never could have shot that pilot. We needed 13 episodes to amortize those sets and to make the show, and that's what I'll probably need on this, is 13 episodes. But we'll see. Maybe they'll do it. Who knows? Anyway, that's what I'm doing. And if I don't do that, I don't know. Then I don't know what I'll do. I'm turning down running shows. I'm not doing for the last 10 years. If I didn't have a show that was my own, I'd be running somebody else's show, and I'm tired of doing that now. So I'm turning those opportunities down. But as soon as I say that, 6 months from now, you'll read that I'm running somebody else's show. But I'm trying not to do that. I'm just trying to say I can afford not to, so I'm not going to do it. I don't know. It depends on how bored I get. That's it. Just, thanks for the fans for watching it, and I'm just as sad as they are that it didn't go. But you got to move on. All right, man. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.